today's presentation, which again, as I mentioned, is entitled Building Wealth Across Generations. So as we like to do so at the beginning of all of our events, we're going to start by reciting the promise of community action. We do so because regardless of our different positions and the work that we do across the country, this is what brings us together as a network. And it states that community action changes people's lives, embodies the spirit of hope, improves communities, and makes America a better place to live. We care about the entire community, and we are dedicated to helping people help themselves and each other. So a little bit about our project. You can see here what we do is we help community action agencies, state associations, basically anyone that's a part of the Community Action Network, and even beyond, to identify effective, promising, and innovative practice models to alleviate the causes and conditions of poverty. And we do so because that's what the image that you see here, our network theory of change, tells us to do. So a little bit about some of the focus areas of the learning community. You can see our different focus areas here. Today's conversation is kind of going to zero in on our financial empowerment for families conversation, which we have been very excited to participate and partner in with field experts, Prosperity Now, and they're obviously joining us for today's presentation, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about my wonderful colleague there in just a moment. But you can, what we try to do is across our different focus areas, we try to make sure that we highlight the different touch points between these conversations. So what we're basically helping you all to do with these different groups and engagements is that if each one of you can just make some small changes within the work that you do in your organization, and we can get a lot of people on board thinking about these innovative practice models, that can result in some big change across the United States. And we have the opportunity to make that impact, as you can see all of the different states and counties and individuals that are served as a result of organizations that are participating in the learning community. If we can get everybody on board to make just those small changes when it comes to this work, think about the lives that can be changed as a result. So here's a little bit about our team. I'll go through this quickly. I've already introduced myself. I'm Hyacinth. We're led in our efforts by Tiffany Marley, who's the project director, and Jarl Crocker, who is the director of our Training and Technical Assistance Department. We're also excited to be joined by Janie Chaffin, former OCS director, and who is our consultant with us on our whole family approach efforts. My great colleague, Courtney Kohler, who's the senior associate in our department, Liza Porras, who's another program associate, and Charity Frankowski actually transitioned out to another role here at the partnership, but previously she served as our AmeriCorps Vista lead on our Rural Impact Project. So without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to my wonderful colleague, Carmen Shorter, who is she's the Senior Manager for Field Engagement at Prosperity Now. So without further ado, Carmen, I'm going to pass the ball over to you, and whenever you're ready, you can go ahead and get started.
That's excellent. Actually, my title is the Senior Manager for Learning with the Field Engagement Team at Prosperity Now, and it's a real pleasure to be on another webinar with all of you across the Community Action Partnership Network. And today we're excited to have a great conversation with some additional speakers, including another fellow CAA program, a colleague of mine here at Prosperity Now, and a new partner that I'm excited to introduce to your community. So please be prepared to join us in a discussion. I know we have some limitations because of the format that we're in, but we'll be watching the chat box, and we are absolutely open to fielding your comments or questions as we move along. So at any point that you want to speak with us during the webinar, please do let us know, okay? So again, this is me. You've seen me before if you've been on this webinar, and if you've been on our Prosperity Now webinars as well. And it's our mission at Prosperity Now to ensure that everyone in our country has a clear path to financial stability, wealth, and prosperity. And when we say everyone, it's really a euphemism for particularly low and moderate income and low and moderate wealth households and households of color, much like the folks that you're taking care of in your services. So an overview of today's conversation. We're going to talk first a general introduction to the importance of economic mobility across generations and how both poverty and wealth can be intergenerational issues. It's not just the folks we see in our offices. It's their families and it's the communities in which they're living that we're also considering. We're also then going to take another look at Prosperity Now's Household Financial Security Framework. And here I'm hoping that you can look at your existing services and what we have identified as the financial needs across different areas of a family or individual's life, and think about where you're touching those lives now and how you can think through the conversation that we're going to have about economic empowerment for the existing generation and the ones coming. We're going to then have some conversation with our speakers. We're going to hear from Wayne Metro about Head Start and two-generational financial empowerment strategies. They're doing some really great work that I'm eager to have you learn about. We're then going to talk to my colleague here at Prosperity Now about children's savings accounts and how that early investment can make a big difference in economic mobility for this generation and the ones to come. And we're also going to talk with our partners at ESOP about the financial security needs of older adults. I think this is a conversation we don't have as often as we might, and hopefully this will help spark some discussion amongst us. We're going to have a panel discussion first just to sort of vibe on some of the things that we've introduced in the presentations, and we're going to open things up to hear from you as well. So let's go ahead and get started. And again, trying to keep this focus more on our speakers. We're going to be seeing and hearing from Kibby, who's the Chief Programs Officer for the Youth and Family Services program at Wayne Metro Community Action Agency. My colleague, Monica Copeland, who's our Senior Program Manager with our Children's Savings Team at Prosperity Now, and Sonia Edwards, Director of Financial Counseling at ESOP. And Sonia, when we get to you, I'm going to ask you to break down the acronym because I think it's a fascinating introduction to how your organization formed and what you're doing now with Ben Rose. So first, before we get to financial security framework, I want to back up for just a moment. When we talk about wealth across generations, what we're looking at is not simply the idea that as we get older, we can pass on material things and material wealth to the next generation. We're really thinking about economic security and the ability to move and advance beyond the current conditions of a family to actually reach what we talk about as that American dream, that with effort and with investment, we can actually see improvement and advancement in our financial condition. And the reality is, particularly for low income and low wealth families, economic mobility is not a guarantee despite the amount of effort being put into getting through today and investing in the future. What we can see is existing wealth has a lot to do with the ability for families to progress, that households with a higher amount of existing wealth in the parents, the parents' wealth has a lot to do with the financial capability, the financial mobility of their children and their children's children. I'm going to point you for future learning to an excellent report that came out in 2015 called Bootstraps Are for Black Kids. And it was put out by Insight. I'm going to make sure I get their title right, but meanwhile I'm going to send it to you all in the Q&A or in the chat. It's put out by Insight CCED about 2015. You probably have heard the name Derek Hamilton and some other researchers were involved in looking at the investment of parental wealth in the education, home ownership, and other financial needs of their children, and what the outcomes of that investment was, both for white families and for black families. They were being specific about those two specifically because a lot of the data we already have around the racial wealth divide indicates that just about every indicator that we look at, black wealth is the lowest across the country, across many different factors. So they wanted to look at if you compare similar behavior, parental investment in the education, what we're talking about is higher education, the college degree of their children, in the initial home ownership of their children, and in taking care of other financial needs, usually emergencies, contingencies. What were the outcomes for those children? And as you can imagine, where parents invested in their children's education, we saw higher educational attainment, right? Greater completion of that college degree. Where you saw investment in home ownership, there were higher rates of home ownership. What's interesting, of course, is that where there was higher parental investment in other financial needs, you didn't necessarily see higher economic indicators. What you learned is that those parents are taking care of emergencies for their children, and their children would have lower financial capability, lower financial attainment because they were struggling. White wealth gave white parents greater resources to invest in their children. But that said, white families who had higher amounts of wealth didn't necessarily invest more in their children's education or home ownership than black families with lower levels of wealth. In fact, you saw a greater will to invest in their children's education for black households, even at lower wealth or lower income, than comparatively to white families. However, regardless, the attainment for white children, the children of white families, was higher because the wealth was higher, the income was higher, and that strategy of investing in your children and your children's children is really more about existing wealth than almost any other indicator that we can think of. So it's really important, as we're going to hear our speakers talking later on today, your work, our work, is about investing in the current generation, the existing adults, the children that are coming behind them, and helping secure the financial stability of those families now so that we can at least avoid the backwards trend of the next generation doing worse than their parents. But there's also a lot of great opportunity to invest in childhood and in the senior years, the older years after retirement, so that we can stabilize the next generation. So I'm going to now turn to the financial security framework here at Prosperity Now, just to have you look at where we see financial need and the service opportunities across the lifetime, and you can help us think through where your current set of services might fall into these needs. And if you were with us on our racial wealth equity webinar a couple of months ago, you have already seen this. So I'm just going to review it very lightly. What we understand is that as people are navigating through these financial systems and the pathway toward economic security, there's a fundamental need to understand what the services are, what the opportunities might be, and having the language and the understanding of how to work through working with financial institutions, working with investment opportunities, thinking about home ownership. So being clear about how these systems work and their choices inside those systems is part of the navigate element. And it's important to have those skills across all of the domains that we're about to talk about. So learn is about the basic skills, right? The executive function and decision-making skills and even job skills, so that folks can access quality employment, so that they understand how to access financial opportunity. And this isn't just about financial education. Learn also includes what we think of as traditional education, from pre-K to postgraduate. All of those elements of learning, a quality education, strengthens people's ability to move through these other options. Earn category, as it might suggest, is about having sufficient income, whether that's from wages or public benefits or disability support or retirement income, employer benefits, tax refunds, any way that folks have income coming into their household to cover their expenses, and for our purposes, even more importantly, to save. That having savings not just for an asset, but savings to avoid the risk of a contingency or a crisis is really important. So earn has a lot to do with people's ability to move into savings. And again, here we're talking about household income left over after all of people's bills. And it's easy, especially for folks who are currently driving a car or currently living in a house that they've purchased, to perceive those as assets. But we understand that here we're talking about wealth where it's income minus any debts, including any assets you're still investing in. And so savings can fall into two categories: savings for those assets, savings for an emergency, and saving for the future might even be a third category. So here it might be parents investing in their children, a person buying their first home, someone investing in their first car, or someone saving for the chance that they might fracture another tooth and they won't have access to health care without that money. Own is about investing in assets, whether that is a business that you're starting, a home that you're living in, retirement strategies, so that you're owning an interest-bearing account that's, investing in your retirement. All of these aspects have to do with building financial security and wealth beyond the individual benefit of the asset itself. Finally, protect. And we don't often talk about this, but it's important to think about protect in two ways. One, income and all of those things are vulnerable to job loss. Having an asset is vulnerable to a fire, so we might be thinking about insurance here, whether that's unemployment insurance or home ownership, house insurance or car insurance. And we're also talking about consumer protections and fraud prevention and all those other protective measures that policy affords us. So in your work, if you're doing any financial empowerment work at all, or if you're working in Head Start, you're probably able to see your services inside one or more of these pieces of the Household Financial Security Framework. So as we turn to our speakers today, think about where some of these services might fall, where you might currently offer them, or where you can partner. And I'm going to turn this now to our colleague at Wayne Metro Community Action Agency to learn more about how they're strengthening financial wellness across the lifespan and across generations with a unique two-generation approach in their Head Start program. So, Katie, I'm going to turn things over to you. And if you need help, Katie, for me to advance your slides for you, just let me know, and I can go ahead and do that, or you can take over from here.
Okay, I think I'll try and take over and advance the slides. Perfect. Thanks, Carmen. It's a real pleasure to be here with my community action peers across the country. So I'm Katie Kibby. I'm the Chief Programs Officer for Youth and Family Services at Wayne Metro. And just wanted to give a brief introduction to our agency. We service Wayne County, Michigan, which has 43 cities in the county, everywhere from rural townships to inner-ring suburbs, and it includes the city of Detroit. Our county is home to about 1.8 million people, with a quarter of the population being children. And a quarter of our county residents live below the poverty line, and 43% are under 200% of poverty. We're home to a very diverse community. Under half the population is white, with a large African American, Middle Eastern, and South Asian populations. Given the needs of our county and our agency's belief that no one should live in poverty, our mission is to empower people and communities to be strong, healthy, and thriving. Under our new 3-year strategic plan, our focus is on creating social and economic mobility through collective impact in 3 key areas: family stability, framed by a whole family approach, quality housing, and economic opportunity. We operate over 30 programs that we describe in 3 core areas. I oversee Youth and Family Services. One of our largest programs is Head Start. We have 9 centers in 7 communities across the county. We also have basic needs, where we provide energy efficiency, assistance, case management, conservation, as well as supportive housing and homeless services. And then we have our community and economic development core area, which is involved in community and neighborhood placemaking. We operate a large weatherization program, as well as a large and robust financial opportunity center, offering everything from financial coaching, group classes, tax preparation, match savings accounts, and home ownership, education, and counseling. So we embarked in 2016, really as an agency after some restructuring, really looking at breaking down silos across our departments. We have the opportunity to be invited to participate with CFED in their Community Financial Empowerment Learning Partnership. Staff from CFED came on site and really worked with our team, did some client journey mapping, some agency journey mapping, and we identified that as part of our work in this partnership, we wanted to focus on integrating our Head Start program with our financial capability services to really connect staff to understand all that we offer and then be able to make those connections to the families that we serve. We utilized the planning toolkit that CFED provided, and one reason that we focused on Head Start in our financial capability services is because we knew that our Head Start families were struggling with financial issues. Our staff had experience in goal setting with families. Head Start has the parent-family community engagement parent-family community engagement framework with financial security being one of those outcomes. And that's a hallmark of Head Start, is that our family advocates are working with our parents around goal setting for their children's needs, but also adult needs and comprehensive family needs. We also knew that we were able to work with those families over a long period of time. Over the course of time, we've expanded to a birth to 5 model, so now we can work with parents when their children arrive to us as infants. We'll be able to work with them over 5 years as they transition onto kindergarten. So the first thing that we did was we conducted a parent survey with our Head Start families, and because we wanted to know how our families saw their financial situation, how were they managing with their finances, and how did they envision their financial situation in the future. And we learned some interesting information. About 52% of our families indicated they had a goal, while only 34% were actually able to put money towards that goal. We learned that 72% were paying for tax preparation, even though we as an agency offered free tax preparation. And so that just exposed our families to some predatory possibilities, tapping into loans at tax time that weren't really in their best interest. And then 47% indicated that they had paid a late fee on a loan or a bill in the past 12 months. So from that information, we discovered that there were opportunities that we could provide to our parents, looking at savings, looking at budgeting, and then being able to offer financial products. So the first thing that we had to do is really engage our staff and build their expertise and their comfort around the goal setting and having financial conversations with families. We wanted to give our family advocates really kind of that baseline of information so that they could feel confident in their conversations. So the first thing that we did is we brought in Central New Mexico, and we did a very intense financial capability training with our family advocates and our Head Start management staff. Since that time, we've been able to cascade that training across our agency and offer it to all our agency frontline staff across our departments. And we've also trained 4 of our staff to be internal train-the-trainers, both for our agency and our partner agencies as well. That was really impactful for our family advocates. They learned a tremendous amount. They felt more comfortable having financial conversations. And unintended consequence was that they actually felt more confident in handling their own finances. So the next step was to start engaging families. So as part of the training that we did, we also offered additional tools, kind of that toolkit that our family advocates could reach into based on conversations that they were having with families. So we also offered training around your Money, Your Goals toolkit, and Better Money Habits toolkit, which is a nice offering for parents. It kind of provides a financial planner that they can take home, work on exercises, and bring that back to have an extended conversation with their family advocate. Another initiative that we did was around tax preparation. We have a scheduler through our call center to schedule our clients for tax preparation services. We trained our family advocates to directly go into that scheduler and schedule tax appointments with their parents on the spot. We also were able to co-locate tax preparation services at some of our Head Start centers, making it more accessible for our families to take part in that. We've also made sure that all our staff are aware of and connected to ongoing workshops that we offer around financial topics. We are able to offer homebuyer education classes. We're embarking on offering classes around student loans for either current borrowers or future borrowers and parents who are making those decisions. We also offer rental housing education as well. So we have an active calendar on our website, and again, our family advocate can go into that calendar and help a family register for those classes on the spot, and they're offered in a variety of locations. We strengthened our internal referrals. Again, that came with training, having our staff in Head Start and our Financial Opportunity Center being able to meet face-to-face, have conversations. So when a family advocate working with a parent maybe had a financial concern or a financial goal that went beyond that basic level of coaching that they were able to provide, they could make the referral to one of our financial empowerment service providers to get that more expertise support. And then we didn't forget the children as well. So we integrated the Sesame Street For You, For Me, For Later curriculum within all our classrooms. We were able to train parents, train staff, and then conduct activities in the classroom with our children. And that's a really great free curriculum that people can tap into. It's age appropriate, focuses on understanding saving and spending, and has lots of opportunities to support parents at home by making everyday routines a learning experience, whether that's going to the bank, getting cash out of the ATM, buying groceries. And we even have an Elmo costume, and Elmo visits the classroom. So we utilize that curriculum every year, and we also tie it into different themed months tied to financial awareness. So what are we doing differently, having gone down this path? Staff are really helping parents to reach their goals differently, incorporating more questions around financial needs, financial goals into the enrollment and intake process. And overall, staff just report that they're very much more comfortable even initiating financial conversations. They don't feel it's taboo to have that conversation as they may once have. They're confident in being able to address financial issues, and they know who to refer to within our agency to get more expertise help. So we've really broken down silos within our agency. And going down this path, we've been able to focus on building some new opportunities to encourage savings, debt management, and credit building by integrating our financial coaching with grants, loans, and other incentives. So I have two examples. One is our You Save, We Match program. And this is a 6-month savings commitment. So families can enroll in the You Save, We Match. They commit to saving $25 per month with a $150 match. This program has assisted in building savings habits for a total of 175 individuals. 30% of those have been Head Start parents during the past fiscal year. and collectively their cumulative savings totaled $32,502. And of the 175 savers, 92 have been able to increase their net worth and have successfully graduated from the program. Second program that we offer is the LIST Twin Account product, financial product designed by LIST to help low to moderate income individuals build credit and save money at the same time. Participants meet the eligibility criteria, take a loan in the amount of $300, the proceeds of which are deposited by the financial institution into a locked savings account. Participant makes regular and timely loan payments over a 12-month period, and the payment history is reported by their financial institution to the credit bureaus. And at the end of the 12-month period, the client receives the $300 in payments that they made, and Wayne Metro matches the $300 to open a secured credit card for the participant to continue building their credit. Of the 10 clients we've enrolled, 80% have increased their credit score to date. And 2 participants went from no credit history to scores of 627 and 558. And 2 other clients have increased their score by over 100 points. All participants during the process have been engaged in financial coaching, making on-time loan payments, and building their savings while working to improve their credit score. And in the upcoming fiscal year, we're happy that we'll be able to offer a total of 30 twin accounts, and we'll be piloting this with our Head Start parents, with 6 accounts being made available to Head Start parents that meet the eligibility requirements. So in this process, we've also not forgotten our own Head Start staff. As part of really looking at retention, we wanted to focus around what could we offer our staff towards reducing some stressors, keeping them engaged with our program, and really making them happy employees. We're in a really tight staffing landscape here in Southeast Michigan. In terms of recruiting teachers. We have a teacher shortage going on, and so we've really looked at a whole host of opportunities to recruit new talent, but we also have to focus on, once we have them, keeping them with us. We have the opportunity to pilot a Head Start Workplace Financial Wellness Program through some funding from a local foundation. And this is a similar Save for Match program as the You Save, We Match. It provides a match savings incentive to our Head Start employees. The program matches $30 for $30 that are saved each month. We're piloting now for 10 months, so it will be up to a $300 maximum. The match, our staff as match participants, they're required to save for an approved savings goal, and that could be establishing a rainy day fund, unpaid bills, transportation, education, a down payment for a home or a rental deposit, just to name a few. We have also incorporated financial coaching, keeping in mind that around confidentiality concerns, we opted not to utilize our own financial coaches, but to work with a partner agency to provide that financial coaching. And we've dedicated time during the week to make that opportunity available for staff to meet with their coach, have a phone call with their coach, and offer group education classes as well. They commit to reaching their savings goal, and as part of that, they commit to completing 3 financial workshops, and those can be online or in person. And then we've also incorporated taking the America Saves pledge. We know that savers with a plan are more than twice as likely to be making good or excellent progress in meeting their savings need. So that's why we incorporated America Saves pledge as a program requirement. When someone takes the pledge, they identify a savings goal, an amount to save per month, and the number of months that they'll save that amount. And so essentially they're making a basic savings plan. When they pledge, America Saves will send them detailed information on how to reach their savings goal and remind them of the amount they chose to save. And they also get monthly challenges to save, as well as information, tips, strategies, advice to help them reach their goal. So it's yet another kind of personal support system in addition to the one-on-one financial coaching. Currently, we have 54 Head Start staff who are participating in the program, and to date, they have a cumulative savings of $10,534 as of July. They've all completed the America Saves Pledge. 44 to date have participated in the financial coaching, and 34 have completed one or more financial education workshops, and they're working towards that December goal. And in the process, we've also surveyed our Head Start staff to get a little bit more information about their financial well-being. We utilize CFPB's Financial Well-Being Survey, which asks questions around financial security and how staff feel about their freedom of choice, their control over their finances, a cushion to meet emergency needs, their goals, their ability to make choices to really enjoy life. And some of, the results were pretty eye-opening. 35% of the staff that were, the Head Start staff surveyed indicated that they were very little or not at all able to handle major unexpected expenses. 33% indicated that they did not have money left over at the end of the month, and 60% felt that they were always or somewhat behind in their finances. And so while we work within our own framework, our budget, to offer the most competitive wages and comprehensive benefits, we feel that this is yet another opportunity to really empower our staff and strengthen their confidence and ability to meet their own financial needs. Also headed into this, as we surveyed around interest in the group education and on-site financial literacy courses, some of the topics that really emerged were around credit, around retirement, and also around student loans. And so you can see in this slide some of the workshops that we've been able to offer our staff. And we have very good attendance at those. And on average, we have about 20 staff that attend each workshop. We will be engaging in an evaluation. Again, this is a pilot, but what we hope can come out of it are some lessons learned and some opportunities to offer similar match savings programs for our staff across the agency. Part of the conversations that we have led to us even looking, going into this next fiscal year, different ways that we can continue to enhance the benefit package that we offer to our staff. We have a very generous benefit package at Wayne Metro, but this year we've added on 2 new exciting fringe benefits. One is a student loan pay down, and the other is paid parental leave. And so this integration that we've done just with Head Start and with our Financial Empowerment Center is cascading and building into other aspects of our agency. Now I think I'm ready to turn it over to our next presenter.
Thanks so much for that, Katie. I know we've already got some questions coming in, so we're now going to turn to my colleague, Monica Copeland at our Children's Savings Program. Monica, and if you would like, Monica, you can take over the presentation, or I can just move slides for you. Just let me know which you prefer.
But is there, should I use a certain button?
I'll click through the slides for you if you just want to say next slide.
Okay, well then next slide. All right, so I'm Monica Copeland, as Carmen mentioned, Senior Program Manager on the Children's Savings Team at Prosperity Now. We have a team that's dedicated on expanding children's savings accounts across the country. And so we're speaking from a place as an intermediary where we help programs set up these types of children's savings accounts programs rather than actually implementing them ourselves. The challenge that we noticed is that many students feel like higher education is financially out of reach. And in particular, for the people that we serve, low-income households have lower expectations of completing college than their higher-income peers. We've also found through the research that, and people a lived experience as well, that paying for college is a struggle, and that 97% of college students from low-income families still have unmet needs even after they've received financial aid. And then nearly half of young people without a four-year degree report that they're not in school because they can't afford college. The next slide. And a really startling statistic is that less than 1 in 10 young adults from low-income households have a bachelor's degree by their mid-20s. And so too many people are missing it, too many young people that, you know, in particular organizations care about are missing out on college education. Next slide. And so we found children's savings accounts are actually a tool that can help. And they can do it in two ways. They can raise kids' educational expectations and enable them to build college savings. Next slide. And so what are CSAs? So just in case anybody is not familiar with them, we wanted to make sure we were clear about our definition, the working definition of the field. So CSAs are long-term savings or investment accounts for children who are 0 to 18. They can be opened in a bank, a credit union, or a 529 account. So the vehicle varies, but there again, it's long-term savings. They're usually used for post-secondary education, and they can be used for other asset-building purposes, but in general, post-secondary education meaning college or training programs or the supplies, materials that you need to complete your college or training program. In addition, the programs provide incentives to build savings. So the programs provide seed deposits or matches or prize-linked savings, some other types of things to kind of spur savings into the account, as well as putting dollars for activities and milestones reached. And the accounts are generally restricted, so they can only be used for those asset-building purposes. Next slide. Okay, so this is just a little visual, an infographic that we have, just so you can kind of walk through and see how it's used. The program will open an account, and usually we're talking about a custodial savings account owned by a program. I mean, these are generally how they're operating, so that it doesn't hurt the families in terms of their ability to get benefits and things like that. So a program will open an account on behalf of the child, and then they'll have a dedicated amount in terms of like initial deposit per child in the account, and then the families or the programs can continue to grow the money. So then you'll see the image of the growing the savings, the child goes to college, and then they graduate. And the next visual. A really powerful statistic that we often share from research out of from Professor William Elliott, who's now at the University of Michigan, is that he's found through his research that low and moderate income children with college savings of $500 or less are 3 times more likely to attend college and 4 times more likely to graduate. And so again, it's the power of building that expectation just by simply having the account, so that, you know, it's now a tool that families can talk about and the community and the programs can talk about with the kids about saving for their future and having college in mind from the very beginning. So next slide. In addition, the type of impact from some of the randomized control studies that are happening, there's one in particular called SEED for Oklahoma Kids. It's been going on for several years, and they found that the CSAs do increase parents' expectations for their children's future. They improve socio-emotional development in young children, and they lower symptoms of maternal depression. So next slide. Again, those background slides were just, again, building the case why we found that this, the Children's Savings Account vehicle or tool is a good one to use if you're trying to start early and communicate, you know, and actually try to have an impact on the future of the children that you work with. Across the country, we have about 54 programs who serve 382,000 children in 32 states and Washington, D.C. And those programs are defined as using the definition we described before. So you can see sort of the visual of Children's Savings Accounts programs. This is a map that's on Prosperity Now's website. There are statewide programs, there are citywide programs, and then there are private programs. And private programs are generally operated by community-based organizations or nonprofits. So, you know, there might be a smaller program just dedicated for the kids that, you know, of the parents that they're working with, you know, maybe your tax clients or your financial coaching families. You know, it might be a nonprofit creates a program specifically for their kids. But the statewide programs are popping up, and they're in Maine and Nevada and Rhode Island. And we just recently heard that Pennsylvania is starting a program statewide in 2019. And then we have citywide examples as well. So if you want to go to the next slide. So here's an example of a statewide one. It's one of the first statewide ones, and it's also one that talked about a lot because it's they have 80,000 kids right now in Maine who have an account that's opened at birth. It's run by the Alphon Scholarship Foundation in partnership with the Finance Authority of Maine. So using the birth records and speaking to the families that, you know, post-delivery, they're able to open up an account for every child born in Maine, and they place $500 automatically, and they invest it for each baby in the 529. And again, that's a custodial or an omnibus or master account that the Alphon Foundation holds on behalf of all the children. And when, you know, in 18 years, when the money grows and then it's time for dispersal, that's when they'll give the money to the kids. So again, $40 million has been invested in that program. So the next slide. An example of a citywide initiative is called College Kids in St. Louis. So the treasurer of St. Louis, Tashara Jones, she launched a program in 2015, so it's about 3 years old. And basically in their program, every kindergartner in St. Louis, in the public schools and charter schools, has an automatically opened account on their behalf with $50. And so again, that allows for the schools and the teachers to talk about the accounts. For in this particular case in St. Louis, they work with a credit union partner so they can make trips to the credit union to continue adding savings on, you know, bank nights and things like that. The program provides savings matches. I think they do some tax time savings to help encourage families to put some more money into the children's savings account at tax time. And they do bonuses for good attendance at the school level. So they kind of have a tiered system. So if kids are, you know, 90% high attendance, then they get, you know, additional money put into their account. So it's not simply the families having to, you know, scrape and pinch their dollars together, but even the program themselves, just based on behavioral activities and milestones, they're putting money in as well. So it's a less strain on the families. Next slide. So then the third example that I want to bring up is that there's one that has a 2-gen strategy in Oakland. So their initiative is called Oakland Promise, and they have 2 children's savings account initiatives, but this particular one is called Brilliant Baby. And so like Maine, they're opening accounts at birth, but they're not opening it for the whole state, the whole city. It's an opt-in program. So they have it's a smaller amount of people getting this benefit, but they basically are enrolling the parents who choose to be a part of this program, and it's a heavily researched program as well. The second program, just so you know, is also called Kindergarten to College. So they have Brilliant Baby and they have Kindergarten to College. But in this initiative, they're going to give $500 in a 529 for each of the kids who are enrolled. And then they have an opportunity for the parents who are also enrolled in the program to receive financial coaching. And they're also working with EARN out in California to provide them with opportunities to save and get matched savings as well. There's a particular product for that. And so with the financial coaching and with the product for the parents, they have some financial incentives given to them right away to address immediate needs, whereas the $500 is kind of set aside for the kids and to grow again for 18 years until they go to college. So then the next slide. We wanted to make sure that you knew about some CSA resources and where you can get help even after the call if you have any questions. We do have something at Prosperity Now created, something called the Investing in Dreams, and it's a toolkit, it's a book that walks you through how to design a children's savings account program, because there are particular features that are involved, everything from, you know, getting together a committee or a task force. It can take quite a few months to a year to plan a CSA program. And so, you know, in addition to fundraising and finding the right account and for your community. And so the book walks you through. It has blueprints and worksheets, so you can help you if you want to learn how to set up a program like this. We also have a website called savingsforkids.org. It's part of a campaign for every kid's future. And so we have resources on that page, frequently asked questions, policy pieces, recent reports. Again, you can sign up if you'd like to continue to have information from us kind of, you know, on a regular basis. And then if you just want to see if there are CSAs of the 54 programs across the country, if any of them are in your state or community, we have a directory on our website, and so we wanted to share that with you so you would be able to look it up and see, you know, because again, some of these programs are open and accessible to all kids or a certain grade level, you know, or it might have a restricted enrollment process so that, you know, maybe it might be in your community, but you can't necessarily enroll your kids, but you might be able to talk to them about how they set up their program, and it makes for good networking and kind of just helps in the research to find out, is there anybody else doing it in your area? So I think that's where I'm going to end. I'm going to pass it back to Carmen and Hyacinth, but if you have any questions, feel free to type them in.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Monica. Appreciate that. And folks, we have shared a couple of links, both from Katie's and Monica's presentation, so you can explore some of their topics a little bit further. Now we're going to turn to our colleague at ESOP. We've been talking with Sonia Edwards, and we're going to do this more interview style, a little less presentation, because there's just so much to talk about inside this body of work. We wanted to narrow things down just a little bit. So Sonia, what I'd like to do is just get us started with a sense of what is ESOP? Tell us more about your organization, the folks that you serve, and some of the work that you do there in Cleveland.
Absolutely. So hello, and thank you for having me. So ESOP stands for Empowering and Strengthening Ohio's People. Roz always says it sounds like a cult, and I promise that we're not. We used to be East Side Organizing Project when we used to be just on the east side of Cleveland, and we went statewide many years ago, and we had to find a new acronym, and that's when we became Empowering and Strengthening Ohio's People. And we used to be in all 88 counties of the state, serving everyone across the state. And we were known for our foreclosure prevention work, like many of the other organizations that are probably on the phone. And in 2012, we started looking at our foreclosure numbers, and that was really the only service that we were providing, other than some organizing work that we were doing and some advocacy and policy work. And when we started doing that, we started realizing that 40% of the people that we were helping were 55 and older. And that's when we really started doing some listening tables and some needs assessments, and we started to ask the questions, how can we start to come alongside our older adults and help figure out how can we help them age in place with financial security. And that's when we launched, actually not until 2014, but that's when we launched our Senior Financial Empowerment Initiative, and that's when we really began to do our financial capability work. And so that's really the birth of that. So we did not become a subsidiary of Benjamin Rose until last year. So I'm not going to talk really about that until a little bit later, if that's okay.
Absolutely, yes. So just for folks to see on screen, this is who ESOP is and their mission and vision. So, of course, at any point, if there's any slides you want me to pull up to support some of what you're talking about, please let me know, and I'll go ahead and move through your slides for you.
Yeah, I'd like to go to the next, let's go to the next one so we can talk about who we're serving and what we're seeing.
Yep.
So right now, we're just going to talk really about our older adult clients, which is primarily who we serve, although we do serve everyone. 74% of the clients that we see are female. 73% of the clients that we see are African American. 70% of them live alone. Most are widowed. Our average client makes $12,131 a year. Often our clients are either caregivers or care recipients, and that's important because I think in this world that we're living in and in this topic as we're talking about kind of from the young to the old, and as people are looking into getting into how do we start to serve all generations, I just read something the other day that said there's only 4 groups of people. You either have been a caregiver or a care recipient, or you will be a caregiver or a care recipient. I just read in a Merrill Lynch report said that women are 2 times more likely to end up in poverty if they are a caregiver. Women lose $324,000 over their lifetime if they are caregivers, and that's in lost wages, Social Security, and pensions. And that is because they lose promotions, they lose time at work, they lose Social Security because of caregiving, right? They have to juggle this Caregiver Act, which causes them to lose all of these other benefits. Not only are they losing money there, the average caregiver also pays out of pocket $7,000 a year. So when we talk about how are we not propelling more money into the next generation, caregivers. We have roughly, they say, 37 billion hours of caregiving a year. That equates to $470 billion, and that's about 3 times what we're paying out in Medicaid a year. So when you look at all of that and we say, well, our older adults are fine, our older adults are secure, they're really not. And that is really what's moving on into the next generation, and it's going to cause the next generation to be even worse off than this generation is right now. And the sandwich generation, who is caring for their parents and still trying to put their children through college, it's even worse, right? So they're spending their children's college funds on caring for their parents. That's even worse. So we're talking about, just got done talking about saving for college, and that generation that's not going to college, I think the next one's going to be even worse if we don't get a handle on this. So the typical caregiver is 49 years old, caring for her widowed mother while juggling her career and caring for her family. And so when we think about that in the context of caring for the generations, I think that's only going to get worse as our country ages, right? So our typical client is between 55 and 80. That's 78% of our caseload is between that age group. We are seeing more and more of our older adults with high debt, more and more of them with high credit card debt, more and more of them with high student loan debt. More and more of them have payday loans, and not just 1, but 2, 3, 4 payday loans. Victims of fraud and scams, not just from strangers, but from family, friends, neighbors, caregivers. Very little or no equity in homes. Cleveland happens to still hold the #1 position for underwater mortgages. I wish we would get rid of that title, but we are still #1 in underwater mortgages.
And
we have a lot of
what that phrase means?
Sure. So underwater mortgages means that our homes are worth less than what the mortgages, we still hold, our mortgages, we have more, our mortgages are worth more than our houses are. So we still owe more than our houses are worth. When the crisis happened and the values plummeted, there was still more left on those mortgages than what our houses are worth.
So
and
what we saw in 2008.
Yes. Some parts of Cleveland have come back and the values have increased. Others have stayed stagnant. or continued to decline. And it's really weird because you can drive from one street to the next, and one street is fine and the next one is not. And I don't know if some of your cities are like that, but here it's very bad. We have some that houses are still $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 is the value. You drive 3-4 streets over and they're worth $300,000. I know that's very different across the nation for you guys. $300,000 is the price of some of yours for your low to moderate income neighborhoods, but that is our values here. So, but we do, actually Vegas took it over for a little while, but we are back to #1 position for underwater mortgages. The second big crisis, I'll skip down for a minute, is property taxes. So we have a huge problem with older adults particularly that are delinquent on their property taxes and are at risk of foreclosure for a few $1,000s in delinquent property taxes. Their house may be paid in full, and now they're at risk of losing their home for a few $1,000s in property taxes. And our treasurer was selling those to third party, and which was making it even worse because the interest rate on these third parties were actually as bad as a payday lender. So that was a huge crisis for us. We've got them to stop selling them for those that have a homestead exemption, but otherwise they were really bad. And the other problem that we're seeing on the property tax delinquency issue is we are having a huge problem with properties being quitclaimed and being quitclaimed in a scam situation with delinquent taxes on the property. So someone is buying a house for $5,000 and they're disguising themselves as some do-gooder. I'm going to buy a house for $5,000 from this do-gooder, and there's $30,000 worth of delinquent taxes on that property when they purchase it. And because they're purchasing in a quitclaim situation, they can do that. So that's another huge thing that we're seeing, and it's a scam. But the county allows that because it's a quitclaim deed. So that's another issue. I don't know if anyone else is seeing that in there.
Yeah, I'm going to ask, that's a great question. Folks, if you are seeing anything like these types of scams in your communities or have heard some of this coming through some of your client pathways, we'd love to know more about that if you could let us know in the chat. I'm pretty sure, Sonia, that it's not unique to Cleveland. So it seems like some of the issues you're talking about here pull into some really clear relief the assumption that our older generations are doing better. And in fact, we need to put our focus on our younger folks and the young workers, because the boomer generation, the retirees, they have something to sit on. What we're seeing from ESOP is that it's not necessarily the case that the folks are living on very low incomes. They have a significant number of debts. There's a number of financial scams and vulnerabilities that they can be exploited by. And so what do you think some of those realities mean for the financial stability of the generation coming after, for their adult children and perhaps for their grandchildren?
So I think some of the things that we need to think about is this is a very private and quiet generation. So it's been difficult to get them to come to us. So we developed a lot of workshops to get to them. When we first started doing this, they didn't come to us. We had to go to them. So we go out in the community a lot. We do 400 workshops a year. So we are going to senior centers. We're going to senior apartment buildings. We go to the library, but honestly our library system, that's not really where they are. But we go anywhere where they're already gathering, trying to get the information out. I think the next generation they're a little bit more apt to seek out services. But the other thing is that we're finding that the people right now we're connecting with, obviously at $12,000 a year, they are at a very low income. But the other people that we're seeing that are a little bit higher income, at least we're a little bit higher income, they don't know how to navigate the system once they retire and they drop down into a very low income system. They've never navigated. So the foreclosure work that we've seen, we found the same thing, right? They were embarrassed. They had never worked that system of entitlements before. They had no idea who to turn to. They were very private, and they waited a very long time until, for some of them, it was too late. For many, it was almost too late. And we had to figure out a messaging system to get to people to say, first of all, it's not their fault, because poverty, it's like AIDS. It doesn't really matter how someone gets there. We just need to figure out how to help them get out of it or navigate it the best they can. Because a blame game is never good, and we all know that, but the messaging has to be that early intervention is the best. So I think that's number one. And number two is now how do we get to the next generation? We created a pre-retirement series because exactly that. How do we get to people now at 35, 40? Before they retire and get into the situation that we're trying to help people get out of now, and we're trying to get into workplaces and help people make decisions before they can't unmake them, like when do I take Social Security? Let's start talking about that before you decide when to take Social Security. I think understanding that the decisions that people make do affect the generations that are coming after them. I think it's a huge education for ourselves of understanding the long-term effects of every decision we help someone make does affect the generations after them. So I think it's a learning curve for all of us that are helping make those decisions. And then how do we help get out there and educate? So I don't really know all of the answers and how we do that, but I also think once we figure it out, is there some policy changes that have to happen? And then how do we get out there and make those, make our voices heard? I think I said to you earlier, Carmen, that, you know, things like earned income tax credit, it stops at 65. Well, I know many of our older adults are not stopping working at 65. The opioid crisis has forced how many of our older adults to continue to raise children way beyond 65, and they need that earned income tax credit beyond 65. We need to push our policymakers to change that and lots of other things to help. If they're going to have to raise these grandchildren, we have to make sure they have the supports they need. And if they have to continue to work to support themselves past 65, then they need the supports they need. So I think there's a lot of work to be done to help make sure they have what they need. And I just think there's a lot more education for ourselves to figure out what supports are still needed. I think we don't know everything we need to know.
That's a really powerful invitation, I think. I'd like to open this conversation to both Katie and Monica, especially around the question of policy that Sonia opened up for us here. And on Hyacinth, I want to let the audience know that we're also going to be turning to audience Q&A so we can answer some of the questions that have come in, and we'd like for you all to join us in this conversation as well. So Sonia started talking about some of the policy considerations that we might need to think about for older adults who are financially vulnerable, and the earned income tax credit is obviously a really important part of that. And Katie or Monica, what are some other policy considerations that practitioners might think of so we can balance both direct service and some advocacy to support both the financial stability of the current generation and financial opportunity for future generations?
Well, Carmen, in our field, in the children's savings field, and this is Monica for the folks on the phone, we often think about at least two things. One is federal policy that would allow children's savings accounts to happen at the federal level, like having the mechanisms in place where the accounts are created and families can set aside the money you know, from the very top. You know, we've seen on a local and state level, people are trying to establish these programs on a citywide level or statewide level, but it would be wonderful if, you know, certain children's savings legislation passed nationwide. And, you know, allowing for certain, you know, tax deductions and breaks and things like that for those families. Another one is asset limits. So many of you might be familiar working in the field that you guys do that, you know, these ideas that, you know, families are worried if they start saving beyond a certain point, and, you know, whether that's like $1,000, $1,500, $2,000, so they don't want to necessarily save in these, you know, whether it's emergency savings or children's savings. And so this idea of eliminating asset limits would really help our families as well. And so the mechanisms we're using it now to protect those families are, you know, having like custodial accounts, but if they could in fact have their own accounts, you know, sometimes that creates a greater sense of ownership as well. So those are just two policy examples in our space.
That's really helpful. And Katie, what are you thinking of?
You know, another public policy issue within our state is for family and home care providers, the subsidy rates. We have different, in terms of trying to increase that rate, different restrictions that compared to other states across the country have made it very difficult, and kind of the standards around it. So advocacy, which benefits parents that are accessing that care, as well as the provider that's providing the care, to ensure that you can increase quality in that regard. And then in terms of increasing income as well.
Mm-hmm. And I was hearing in certainly, Sonia, in your presentation, the need for some consumer protections. And I wanted folks to hear more about the scam squad that you all are part of, and the idea to tie protection for against elder abuse is actually really important to connect to some of the other financial exploitation that we're familiar with, whether that is predatory lending, like payday loans that are really hard to escape. And we know for lower wealth families, even regardless of income, folks are using those loans not for fun or even for assets, but to take care of everyday expenses. So Sonia, tell us more about the Scam Squad and how a practitioner organization is getting involved with this coalition.
So the Scam Squad is made up of government and nonprofit agencies here in Cuyahoga County, and we just really get together. It's got law enforcement, it's Consumer Protection Bureau. Really, all of us just get together monthly. We talk about what's new, what have we been seeing, what can we do. We have spots on TV where we just run 5-minute weekly Scam Squad spots on what are we seeing for the consumers. And it's been very helpful. We were able to create visor cards for our police force because there's actually some laws that are different when it's an elder versus when it's not, when it's a crime and when it's not. It's kind of different when it's kind of strange. Actually, it should always be financial abuse, but it's not. When it's someone under 55, it's strange. But we were able to create those for the law enforcement to keep above their visors, and then they have tear-off cards for referrals to give to the older adult on where they need to go to get help when something happens to them. So that was actually a neat project that we were able to work on. And as far as the payday lending, I think one of the strangest things that we see over and over again is, I would say 70% of the time when they take out a payday loan, it's hardly ever for anything they need. It's something their grandchildren or their children need.
Wow.
And we've actually started to tell them over and over and over again, please have them call us and see if it's something we can connect them to. Because, you know, we have a benefits enrollment center here, and we say, probably most of the time is something, unless it's just something that those kids or grandkids don't need, we probably can find a resource to help get them what it is that they need without you getting that payday loan. Or it's something that you just need to say no about. But hardly ever do they take out a payday loan for something that they actually need for themselves or even want for themselves. They're just taking it out because their grandkids want something or need something, or their kids want or need something. But the other thing that we're trying to advocate for is we're really trying to get into this health-wealth connection and create a financial medical partnership with our county hospital. And there's a lot of things that Medicaid will pay for around the social determinants of health, but there's really not a whole lot in the financial realm. So we're really trying to advocate and push for a lot of our work in the financial capabilities world to be paid for by Medicaid. So I think if we all push a little bit harder, I think we're close. But I think nationally, if we push a little harder, maybe we'll get there.
Yep, and I'm guessing that's an important consideration for other folks on this call. So it looks like one of the questions that came in a little bit earlier, folks, you asked us a little bit more about wealth building strategies and raised an important consideration about the difference between income and wealth. And, you know, there is data coming out that suggests that the income gaps might be narrowing, but as we've learned across this series, the wealth gaps are increasing, whether that is across race or across age. And so the questions about how can CAAs or even private individuals take some kind of action around the growing wealth gaps. And I think we've touched on some of those ideas today about whether it's an investment in early education or two-generation strategies so that we are supporting not just income growth, but some saving strategies and increasing people's ability to manage crisis. We're also hearing that it's important to consider the protections, right, that some of the wealth stripping strategies that keep low income and low wealth individuals in a low wealth condition, whether that's predatory lending or the residual impact of redlining and the inability to actually see, you know, to see a return on your investment in houses in low-income neighborhoods. There are a lot of strategies for CAAs to explore, and I'm going to guess that a lot of you on this call are doing some of that already. So the safety net, we understand that it's really important to make sure that there's something to buffer families against crisis. The tax code offers a lot of opportunities to write the upside down wealth building aspects that are already built in our tax code, whether that's the earned income tax credit or other refundable credits that we can invest in. So those of you who might support a VITA or community tax preparation program understand the importance of not just free tax preparation, but maximizing that refund. It's because for a lot of low income and low wealth families, that tax return is one of the largest incomes, largest boost to their income across the year, and it can be both a way to buy out of debt that they've accrued from the previous year or a saving strategy, even if it's an emergency savings plan. So take a look at some of the other webinars we've had in the Financial Empowerment Series here at CAP, and we can certainly, you can reach out to us, whether that's Hyacinth or myself, if you have some more questions about how you can get started or what programs are already out there that can address wealth. And we can't ignore what we started here, which is a conversation about policy. There's program interventions, and there's absolutely some policy advocacy that will help. Anyone else want to add something? Or one of our speakers want to add to that question about the ways to address wealth?
Hi, this is Katie. I just wanted to add to the power of really capturing the stories of clients as they take advantage of products and opportunities that CAAs offer, because, you know, there's misconceptions about what people do with credits that they receive or, you know, added income, and to help switch that narrative on poverty to really show that people, invest in things and opportunities to move their lives forward. So that's a really powerful piece as well. Sometimes, our systems are designed to not even encourage building income, and that's why some participants are fearful of getting that job or taking that next step, because they get penalized by the system that they're in, and they're kind of caught in this catch-22. So really, capturing those stories and sharing them with policymakers and really advocating around that.
That's a really great point. And actually a question came in for you, Katie. I'm going to pull back up to it. The question was about the You Save, We Match program. So the question was whether or not Wayne Metro puts up the $150 match for that savings plan, or do you partner with a local financial institution or some other partner to provide the matched funds?
We partner with various funding sources, including financial institutions, to provide that funding source for the match. And then the match is provided at the end once the participant has met their savings goal.
Thank you for that. And then this question, Monica, is for you. You were talking about CSA programs, and the question came in about the awareness inside schools. How aware are teachers or principals of the availability of CSA programs? And how can we leverage teachers or principals as a resource to connect families with this particular savings opportunity for their children?
That's a really interesting question. We talk a lot in our with our partners about community engagement, school engagement, and there are definitely varying levels. So, for example, if you're a citywide program and whether you're operating out of the treasurer's office or the city government, you often are partnering also with your Department of Education. And so, at least from a high level, whether it's the superintendent or school board, you have buy-in, hopefully from the top, and then you have access to the schools and the principals. But often the school, the program coordinator, whomever is leading the children's savings work, still has to build relationships, building relationships with the principals, the school secretary, the teacher, to again get in the schools. Parent liaisons are often quite helpful because they're champions and they're able to talk about children's savings. So the level of engagement varies again by school, but once you're in, the teachers again can be very helpful. The schools are often used as vehicles to stuff materials into the backpacks, whether it's a flyer that goes home at the beginning of the school year, the middle of the school year. So there's a whole host of strategies partners are doing to work with the schools to get them, to get the word out and to make sure parents know and the children know, and that the teachers can also, and in some cases, some of the teachers are even providing some financial education. And whether it's provided by the Children's Savings Program or local bank or community partner or credit union partner, but sometimes they can go into the classrooms with lessons, or the teachers themselves can teach a lesson related to financial education, and then they can link it back to the children's savings account. And sometimes in some cases, they're even collecting a little bit of money at the school to put in piggy banks. So there's definitely a whole host of things people can do at the school level if you can, again, form that relationship, particularly with school leaders.
Excellent. So, Hyacinth, I'm noticing our time, so I want to look at you, make sure we are moving in accordance with our scheduled time.
Thanks for checking it. I think we can finish off the couple of questions that we still have in the chat, but I do want to let folks know that we are coming up on 3:30, so if you do have a time commitment, please feel free to kind of peel off, as I said, the slides, and the recording will be shared. Otherwise, if you have a few extra minutes, please feel free to hang on as we answer these last couple of questions in the chat. So, Carmen, I'll turn it back over to you to keep with the last.
Great, thank you. And I'm about to say I'm having a little difficulty opening up the Q&A box. So I saw some, but I'm afraid that I may be missing some of the questions. So have I missed something that you could help me see? For some reason, my screen's not letting me get there.
There's actually just one other question.
Okay,
you all have all kind of touched on it a little bit, but one of our very well-read participants shared a recent New York Times article discussed the wealth gap between low-income college graduates and those from high-income backgrounds. Is that problem addressed through any of your various programming or people that you partner with? I know all of you have touched on that in pieces, but if there were maybe things that you left out for the sake of time that you wanted to elaborate on, that would be great.
So I can address that from our side. From the children's savings side, that is kind of like a hot topic. A lot of people may question whether or not a small savings account can have a big impact on the wealth divide, and it's true. It's not. Depending on what your program's mission is set up to do. Sometimes it's about college expectations. Sometimes it's about financial education, linking to savings accounts. But if you're really trying to address the racial wealth divide or even racial wealth divide, the amounts that need to be invested in these accounts needs to be bigger. And we've talked about that in some of our recent papers. We have one on reimagining CSAs to address the racial wealth divide. It's on Prosperity Now's homepage right now. But anything from $7,000 to $10,000, a larger amount from the beginning, and particularly for those families that are low income, would be very helpful in addressing the wealth divide and possibly could make a big impact.
Thanks, Monica.
You know, I would add to that obviously this is a complex issue that we might be looking at college graduation rates and the economic impact of that, but we can't have that conversation without looking at what prepares someone for that college experience, what resources they have as they enter college, and even for low-income, low-wealth families and households of color, we have to look beyond the traditional college age if we're going to really look at who we're talking about getting that education. A lot of households of color, and I'll have to do a little digging to pull up the original research if this person likes data, but there has been research to reflect that households of color tend to have working adults going to for-profit schools, and there's a lot of complexity in that. So if you follow the work of some of the research around for-profit schools and the consequences of that investment, even if they're using Pell Grants to attend, they're paying very high tuition rates, higher than even a community college that can offer the same training for only 2 years. They're paying a higher rate for a longer time while also working low-income jobs. So we have to make sure we're digging into what is that data, who is inside that data. And again, if you look at the Bootstraps or For Black Kids report that I linked earlier, some of those kids are graduating having had parental investment in that education. And we know that having that parental wealth boost while you're in school has shown improvements both for Black and white kids who get that benefit. However, the income after that degree does vary by race, and that has to do with a lot of the structural issues that we've talked about surrounding the racial wealth divide. These are not individual issues, but systemic. There's also data to show that the income and wealth of the white and Black parents has something to do with what they can and cannot invest regardless of will. So there's a lot to unpack there. I think we can dig in further, and if you're looking for people who might be touching any piece of this work, at Prosperity Now we're supporting 2 really great initiatives, the Building High Impact Nonprofits of Color project and the African American Financial Capability Initiative. Those projects are supporting organizations of color who are looking at community-driven solutions for some of the broader issues, some of the larger structural issues that are shaping the racial wealth divide. And they're taking some interesting strategies from investing in financial wellness for their employees at nonprofit organizations, all the way to exploring land trusts and ways to center wealth inside communities of color. So we can talk more about that if you want to get in touch after, but there's a lot of really great work on making the connection between educational attainment and outcomes and the larger issues that drive that.
And Carmen, I'm trying to share them in the chat. I got the Building High Impact Nonprofits of Color. What was the other community that you mentioned that you all are doing?
African American Financial Capability Initiative, AAFCI.
Okay, I'm going to share that for everybody in the chat so you guys can access it and read more about the great work that you guys are doing. Okay, so there we go. So Carmen, I know that you have a couple of concluding slides that kind of highlight ways that people can stay in touch with you guys. So maybe if you wanted to take just another minute or two to go through them, and then we can wrap up after that.
Sure. Now, I have to acknowledge that we, for the sake of time, moved a little quickly through some of Sonia's stuff. Again, ESOP is doing a lot of great work, and so I don't want to neglect that there's some additional opportunities to learn through what ESOP is offering, and of course, you know, here at Prosperity Now. So we want you to stay in touch with us, and we'll get to that in just a moment. We also want you to realize that there's a lot of learning opportunities here at Prosperity Now. There's a couple of different networks that we've designed based on specific interests, whether it's where you're currently providing services or where you'd like to explore. So you'll see that on your screen currently. These practitioner networks both have a mailing list where you can get targeted information about your areas of interest. So the Campaign for Every Kid's Future, for example, would give you occasional updates about what's happening in the world of CSAs, including blog posts, reports, and learning opportunities. The Adult Match Savings Network, Affordable Home Ownership Network, Financial Wealth Equity Network, and Financial Coaching Network all have to do with some of the topics we talked about today. If you provide community tax preparation, then the Taxpayer Opportunity Network will be of interest for you. We also have a growing, it's not quite a network yet, we are getting toward that place, but the Medical Financial Partnerships learning community touches on some of the issues, as Sonia mentioned, around connecting the health, wealth indicators. And then finally, our Innovations in Manufactured Housing, or Home Network. So please take a look at our website, prosperitynow.org, to learn more about those and see if you'd like to get connected. If you want a deeper dive, we also have a listserv that has a conversation on those particular topics. You can also get involved in advocacy. We have an advocacy center that makes it very simple to sign up, and it's a one-stop shop. You can take action as an individual. You do not have to represent your organization, but it's one way that you can use your voice on behalf of the communities that you serve. And we have a lot happening to stay connected to, so you can learn more about that. So here again, our stay in touch slides. So we have obviously missing data, so we'll get back to that when we share these slides out. Hyacinth will make sure that we've got the contact information for Wayne Metro, because I didn't have that before I put it in. So we apologize for that, but we'll make sure you have a way to reach us, and we want you to stay in touch. If you have questions, learn more. And Sonia, if you could just take one quick moment, let folks know about the training opportunities that you're taking on the road.
Yes, absolutely. So Roz and I, our executive director, do go out and do a train-the-trainer model on how we developed our Senior Financial Empowerment Initiative, and we do have one coming up September 27th. We will be in Indianapolis. October 4th, we will be in Milwaukee. We are not 100% sure of the date that we'll be in Philadelphia, but it's supposed to be in late October. We will be in Detroit in November 13th, I believe, is the date for that. And we will be in Phoenix, Tampa, and DC, but we do not have dates yet for those, but they will either be late 2018, early 2019, and we can get those to you, Carmen, and you can get those mailed out once we get those scheduled. But I can get those other dates to you either today or tomorrow if you would like to get those sent out. And I know Roz has those evites as well, and I can ask her to get those over to you when she comes back tomorrow.
Fantastic. That'd be great. And so we thank you, Hyacinth. We're going to turn things back over to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Carmen. And wow, a big thanks to all three of our presenters today, Katie from Wayne Metro, Monica, and Sonia. We really appreciate you all taking a few moments to share your time and expertise with us and to help us kind of think through this conversation about the various touch points that organizations can use to really get involved in this work of breaking that cycle of intergenerational poverty. You guys have talked about, and going both ways, so not just with children, but also with older adults as well. So we really appreciate your time and expertise, and thank you for leading us in a great conversation. A couple of things from the partnership, just shout out and shameless plug for our MLTC conference, which is going to take place in New Orleans, January 15th through the 18th. Please visit our website. Registration will be up soon, but you can learn more about the hotel. And here's the contact information for the LCRC team. Please reach out to any of us with any of your questions, comments, or training and technical assistance needs. And as I mentioned, we'll make sure to get out the recording from today's presentation and the slides as well, so you can see some of the material that we didn't have a chance to go over together. But that is going to conclude our presentation for today. A big thanks once again to our presenters, and thank you to all of you for joining us today. Have a good one.